Hello, everyone. Nubkeks here. Welcome back to Nub Raids, where we've got a full breakdown of 4 different days of Shard Pull events coming up for the weekend with the Afterparty Path, which will give us the Lord Fabian Soul. So we have info for this in the event calendar, and then, guys, I will be walking you through all these champs as well. But the Afterparty event, what is it going to give? Number one, there is an avatar frame, which is fun. There's going to be mythical skill tomes in there, eternal soul stones, and champion souls. In other words, this is going to be an incredibly expensive hero's path. If you want to grab everything, it's absolutely massive. But the festival creation may be coming to a close, but we're partying until the end. Join us for an anniversary after party with an amazing chance to blah, blah, blah. You get souls for Lord Entertainer Fabian, themed avatar frame, and more. So it is interesting for sure that it says to get souls. I'm guessing it will probably have separated a 3-star perfect soul and then probably a 4-star split soul and a 5-star split soul. They've never done a 6-star soul. Like, that's so insanely strong. I don't know if they ever would, but I'd expect they might even do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think certainly 3, 4, 5. And yeah, Fabian is interesting. He certainly benefits from the 1 and 3-star, but the big ones are definitely the 5 and 6-star for him. 5-star obviously makes your blessing stronger, so does 6-star. But at 5-star, and you probably, by the way, I've done a whole guide on him, but probably going with temporal chains. That extra accuracy is incredibly good, and then the extra speed is incredibly good for Fabian. So yeah, I'll do a full breakdown of this path tomorrow and the routes through it, how much it will actually cost you. Um, just any tips or tricks I can think up. But yeah, this is probably worth doing for any later game players. It probably even worth skipping a fusion in the future to get this soul, because he is such a solid champion, I think. But we'll see. Now, one thing that is very spicy about this, there is a Fire Night tournament. We can even see it in game. Fire Night tournament, which starts tomorrow as well, and this is going to be giving a key for the hero's path. Now, it's not entirely clear how this will work. What happens if, will this key carry over to later events? Is this like an extra key, or is this key necessary to do the hero's path? My guess is it's probably, let's be real. Let's assume it's the worst case scenario that this is going to be, it's an epic only Fire Night tournament, which isn't too bad, but it's annoying. Let's assume that you will need this key to do the path and probably need it to do anything worthwhile in the path. So this will be a mandatory extra tournament that the key will expire before anything else. It's just the absolute worst case scenario. So yeah, we'll see. I think it could, in theory, be a fun. This is brand new. It could be a fun new thing they could do, which is that some random tournaments would give you hero path keys, and you could save those up and decide when or where to use them. That would be really fun. I don't think that's what they're going to do, though. I really think it's most likely to be locked to just this event. We'll see tomorrow, but don't get your hopes up. I would say it could actually be a really cool thing, like collecting some path points or keys to use on a path of your choosing. They could do such fun things with this game, but let's be real, it's probably just a way to make you waste a bunch of energy. So yeah, that is what's going on with this path. Interestingly enough, this path, by the way, we're going to see the summon events now. The path does start on Friday, and it goes through Monday as well. It ends at the start of Tuesday. Well, it depends on which time zone you're in, of course. But yeah, it's like 4 days of summoning instead of just 3. So yeah, for this path, by the way, it is not only summoning champions, so like summon rush, but is it? Maybe it just is. Is it just this summon champ? No, and upgrade them. So it's also champion training. So summon rush plus champion training. Yeah, so you'll be able to balance out some summoning with leveling up champs, and potentially if you've got lots of brews saved up, lots of food champions, you could potentially do a significant chunk of the path with champion training. So that could help as well. Let's look at the summon boosts that are going to happen, though. We've got 4 days of this. I've tried to get them all in one screenshot here. So we got Friday. The Fridays one lasts for 25 hours. And then the other events all last for 24. I don't think that makes much difference, but it's worth pointing out, I suppose. But yeah, we've got obviously progressive chance events, 15x events for all your different shard types. So let's dive in. At a quick look, I will tell you right now that glancing through all of these, I would say that these are generally good champions, generally, but there's few that are like super OP. You know, like you're not having any Taras Marishkas in here, that sort of thing. No faction unities. So there's good champions, but nothing crazy. Is sort of my vibe. So on Friday, you've got Staltus Dragonbane, Hansel Witch Hunter, Cupidus, Valkyrie, Lysandra. We'll come back to the Voids. Again, these are okay. Staltus, he's a good defensive damage dealer. Hansel, I think actually something to think about as well as we look at this is how much would any of these champions help you personally in Faction Wars Hard? We know Faction Wars Hard is coming. We can expect it to be pretty hard. It's in the name. Would any of these champions actually help you progressing through Faction Wars Hard? Delta's pretty good. So he's a damage dealer. He self-buffs increased defense. He's got 2 AoE nuking skills, and he's AoE stuns. So he's pretty solid. Again, he's not OP. He's just a good defense damage dealer with CC. Hansel. Hansel's actually a little bit better than I think people would expect, because I think people forget he's just a good damage dealer, but he does have lockout, which is decent. So he does have a little bit of lockout, which could be quite handy. And when you put him in with Gretel, so if you've got Gretel, they're actually potentially quite good. So I would say that Sacred Order is quite a strong faction. So you might not need them. Like if you've got Wixwell and you got Noel, fusions from the last year or so, you're probably in a pretty good spot support-wise, and can slap in almost any damage dealer. I mean, Phoenix is a good damage dealer. Deacon with decreased defense to enable him. It's a pretty solid faction. But Hansel's not bad. I think he is good with Gretel. It's a high investment team, but it does bring you lockout on lots of AoEs. So he could actually be okay. Cupidus, again, is sort of only okay. He used to be meta a long time ago. Him plus Venus in Arena was meta for a little bit. They were decent together in Hydra. I have Venus Cupidus, and I use Venus, but I don't really use Cupidus, to be honest. I do think that Cupidus will see a bit of a comeback for Faction Wars. Valkyrie, big shielding and counterattack. Again, she was meta for a little bit, endgame, for Fire Knight Hard 10, but with new champions, new ally attackers, Newts, and all of that, and Marius, I don't think she's used really much anymore. And Lysandra, actually a decent champ for Arena. And you can totally use her as a speed booster there, especially if you got a big soul for her. So she's a good speed control champ. Again, I would say none of these champs are staggeringly overpowered or extremely good. They're all just very solid. They're very good. And you can sort of go for, I feel like almost go for any of them. So yeah, it depends. Looking then at the next day. So on Saturday, the 29th, Mighty Uko, Snicktrack, Gwendolyn, Artak, and Karagar Deathbell. Again, pretty similar. Good champs, but, you know, none of them are crazy OP. Uko is a good arena champion, a good support. Obviously, gives you a revive for Faction Wars as well. That's good. Snicktrack, sort of like a Nekmothar or a Krisk. Pretty solid for Chimera, but not crazy. Gwendolyn, very solid for Chimera. Again, that sort of decreased speed, debuffing champ. Good for Chimera. You know, not totally busted or anything, but good. Artak is probably the best one here today, on this day, Saturday. Artak's pretty nice for Ice Golem Hard. He does have fairly substantial meta relevance there with the AoE burns, AoE burn explosion, AoE decrease attack, and he's tanky. So yeah, he can definitely solo Ice Golem Hard, which is pretty powerful. And Karagar Deathbell is like a team protector. Again, he's a good team protector. So yeah, like Gwendolyn is probably the one that's used, and Artak are probably the ones that are used the most endgame for Chimera and Ice Golem, respectively. But they're probably the ones that would help you the least with Faction Wars. I think the other champs would help you more with Faction Wars. Again, I think they're all decent. On Sunday, I think this is the strongest set. We've got Kymar, Theodore, Mashald, Tomblord, and Bad Alcazar. I think Kymar and Theodore are probably the two strongest overall champs on this entire list. Theodore is really good if ever Poison comes back into the meta with, you know, higher stages of dungeons, hard mode or whatever. He is phenomenal, both Poison and HP burn explosion. Very good. He extends the debuffs before he explodes them, which is massive. So he can really rip through waves. So he's very solid for that. And, you know, there's a good few poisoners like Calvalax and Tomblord. And, you know, Badel is different faction, but still, you've got some good poisoners in his faction for Faction Wars as well. So he's very solid. And then Kymar. Kymar still has some relevance in Arena. Great speed aura and the buff strip and sleep. It's not bad. Yeah, not bad at all. And he's got the full reset. The full reset is definitely his highlight. and that opens up a lot of speed farming teams. Like I still use my Kymar all the time. Just the full reset with turn meter boost. Um, I think they're both very good. Mashald is a good Hydra champion, good damage. Tomb Lord, he's decent for like Fire Knight normal, multi hits, poisons. He's okay. Bad L again, AoE poisons, cleansing, healing. He's like a great solo champ. They're all good champs. I'd say Kymar and Theodore stand out as being the most useful. And then finally on Monday, 31st, we've got Brogni, Quilcha, Herndig, Oella, and Michinaki. I'd say probably Michinaki, and Michinaki's probably the best one. Brogni, okay. I'd say Michinaki. I wouldn't be too keen on the rest. Like, Oella is a good resistance healing champ. Herndig, lots of AoE damage. Quilcha, he's good against stun champs, breaks free, good damage. Brogni's probably fairly unique with his shields and healing you, reflecting damage. He's quite good for that. So yeah, again, it really depends on your account. I think if you're going for these regular shards, it totally depends on you. You might say, well, Nub, I've got He-Man and I've got, whatever. Like I've got He-Man, I've got Siegfried, and I've got Falmond. I have no use for another Sacred Order damage dealer. I'm like, yeah, no, you really don't. That's totally fair. You might say, Nub, I've got no supports in Barbarians. I've got Thor, he can do crazy damage, and I've got Farak in the Fat for ally attacks. I got Sylve the Drakes, but I'm worried about surviving. She's the only support I have. Valkyrie could be really solid, that sort of thing. Bearing in mind, this is only, of course, a progressive chance. Your chances are still very small. I mean, rough rule of thumb, like 5%, 7%, something like that. If you're pulling multiple legendaries, might go up above 10% at best case scenario. That when you get a legendary, it would be one of these. So you're talking 95 times out of 100, or in the best case scenario, 90 times out of 100, you are not getting the champion you select from your ancients, primals, or sacreds. Understand that? Yeah. What would I recommend most for me? It would be Kymar and Theodore. I'd recommend Kymar the most. I'd recommend Theodore probably second. Who would I give a third place vote to? That's tricky right there. Honestly, maybe even just Artak. If you don't have an Artak, but there's probably ways around, other ways to do Ice Golem hard. I don't know. Mitch, let me know who you put third. I put those two in. I'm not super sold on. I think the rest are pretty similar, and I really think you could go for any of these depending on what you need for your account. All of these can have places in niche teams. There's basically none of these that I would say is absolutely totally useless. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting there. I've got most of them, and again, I only dabble with them every now and then. They're not super late game, end game relevant. I say late game relevant, but not super end game. We'll see with Faction Wars. Now, for the Voids, Cardial to Hanorak and Baron on Friday. On Saturday, Warlord, Leorius, and Raka. On Sunday, Narses, Volcanen, and Hegemon. And on Monday, Acrisia, Emic, and Tormen. This is an interesting set. So Friday is kind of random. Cardial is obviously a brilliant support. Really, really good support. I'm probably going to come into it for Faction Wars. I'd say he's sort of fallen off on other stuff, like he was showing up before in Clanbot, Demon Lord teams, in Hydra teams. But I feel like he doesn't show up half as much anymore. He's still a great champion, really good champ. So he'd be pretty highly recommended for me. Ally attack, lots of healing, revive on death. He's going to be absolutely crazy for Faction Wars. But the only downside, again, is Sacred Order is pretty stacked, Like if you've got Wixwell Noel, he actually combos pretty well with those. But you've already got a good support roster right there. And you throw in like a Godseeker or a Cardinal. I don't know. Maybe not going to be the hardest faction. Then again, there's quite a few revives. I could easily see them, for instance, doing, you must use revive on death. Like, you must revive on death, I don't know, 3 champions to 3-star this stage. You could probably do it with Godseeker, but it'd be tricky. A lot easier with Cardial. Like, they could do something like that. You never know. There's also, of course, Maud. If you've got Maud, you probably don't need him either. But Cardial, I do think he's a strong option. I think he's strong. To Hanorak, a good support overall. I think she struggles to find a place. She had a particular place, I think, for Hydra as a block buff champion, but I think newer, better, more consistent block buff champions and Perfect Veil champions have really replaced her, like Fear All the Barkhorn. So she's good, but not crazy. And Baron, he's got that big AoE one shot with Sky Piercer. Uh, he's got the splash damage OP thing like Siegfried and Wukong have on his A1. But yeah, Baron is not crazy useful. You could use him for the guaranteed decreased defense on his A2 for some bosses. Though you can also just use Quintus for that you get from Live Arena, and that's much easier to get him now than it was before. I'd definitely be recommending Cardial on this first day. On Saturday, Warlord, Leorius, and Raka. Again, Raka could be very helpful for Orc Faction Crypt, though they do have a couple of good revivers in Epics with Tagore and Old Hermit Yorg. But she's very nice. She could be very, very strong for that and decent for Chimera, but she's never had a very meta place. Leorius is a good damage dealer for Arena, but there's a lot of good damage dealers for Arena. Warlord would be my highlight from day 2. My only concern with Warlord is you probably just got Fabian, and it's really difficult to have the gear to do both of them. But he could still fit into your roster pretty well. You definitely see a lot of him in like Stone Skin and Supersonic, pretty common. He does have the best lockout with a full turn meter depletion and puts skills fully on cooldown. So he puts them up to a longer cooldown than anyone else in the entire game. So he's still super relevant for that, I think. Yeah, I think he's still a great lockout champ. But again, you just got Fabian, so he might not be too enticing. I don't know. Especially if you're going to be getting a 5-star soul for Fabian. If you don't have any soul for Warlord, it's a hard sell for me. But he is a great champ. Sunday, we've got, I think Volcanen is the weakest one here. He's good for Hydra. But yeah, he's kind of awkward to use. He's good. He's a good Hydra damage dealer. Now, Narcisse and Hegemon are both excellent for Arena. Hegemon, he can just win you a bunch of fights in live Arena. He's great. Can be one of the best like final pick champions against speed teams. Forces a lot of bans. Very strong. Could definitely become strong if you got a big blessing or cracking roots in the Stone Cleaver set. When you get some of that, that could be pretty powerful too. So yeah, Hegemon's great. Love Hegemon. He's really come back. I did a video a while ago on champs that beat power creep. He's pretty much top of the list, man. He's great. Narcisse is again really solid. If you've got Ancora from last year's Fusion, they're a really strong combo. And Narcisse really hard counters champions with shields or strengthen in Arena. He brings a block revive as well. Very good against Taras Marishka. Narcisse is great. I'd find it difficult to pick between the two, honestly. Like, if you told me, Nub, you have to lose either your Narcisse or Hegemon, which I'd probably give up the Narcisse, honestly, because, you know, Ancora goes well with lots of champs, whereas Hegi does give some... Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd recommend Narcisse more, but I really like Hegi in the current meta. It's a tough one. Let me know what you think about that. They're both great picks. And then on Monday, the 31st of March, Acrisia, Emic, and Torment. Again, they're all good champs. Acrisia could go well with a Noose and a Marius for, you know, some just big enemy max HP speed farm dungeons. It's not too shabby. Again, she's sort of been replaced, I would say, by Marius in more teams, and just with the general power creep, you know, enemy max HP, apart from the Marius, not as, you know, she was crazy OP when she first came out. I don't think she's crazy OP anymore. She's good. But yeah, I don't know. Emic, solid support. Torment is great for Arena. It functions similarly to Hegemon, you know, freezing enemies, laying out crowd control and doing some decent damage. He's a great champ. Kind of relies on big blessings, though. He's pretty stat hungry, needs lots of accuracy. Probably go defense tree instead of Helm Smasher. Quite wants the accuracy from 5-star. Quite wants the crit damage and defense from 3 and 4-star to help him do damage. He's pretty blessing hungry, but he can be very good. So yeah, from the voids, I mean, I would lean towards the Cardial. Cardial for PvE. And then Narcisse, Hegemon, or Torment for PvP are all good choices. And yeah, I think, again, I think you could realistically pick any of them. You know? Like, if you told me, like, who'd be my least favorite here? Like, maybe the Baron would be my least favorite. Or Volcanen, maybe, would be my least favorite. But if you said, nope, I really want the Volcanen, I think he's going to help me in Undead Faction Crypts, and he'd be a nice upgrade for my Hydra team, I'd be like, you know what? Fine. Go for it, bro. That's okay with me. So yeah, that's sort of how I feel about it. So yeah, again, rough overview. I feel like, let me actually highlight these. I think Narcisse, I'd recommend. Hegemon, I put them similarly. And I'd definitely be recommending Cardial as well. Again, similarly. So yeah, for me, it's like I said, I feel it's a bunch of great champions. Nothing that's like crazy OP. Wow, it's the best ever. Um, but very, very good champs. Yeah, solid champs, but nothing crazy. Uh, so there you go. Personally, not sure. I might pull for cardio. Um, yeah, maybe for me, I might target cardio and yeah, or I don't know, maybe the Theodore who I don't have. That they'd probably be the ones I'd be looking at myself. But yeah, there you go, guys. Let me know which ones would you pick as the best. There's a lot of options and lots of ways you could go, and I will, like I said, break down the past tomorrow. But I think that's everything we've got to cover for the news here today. Um, yeah, let's cross our fingers and pray that this Fire Night tournament won't be super obnoxious. I'll give you a team for that as well tomorrow when I'm doing the thing. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. It's gonna be like Royal Guards and Allure and stuff like that. Yeah, anyway, there we go. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you all next time. Goodbye.